Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
Hi, it's me, Egbert, E-G-G-B-U-R-T, the owner of this radio station. I invite everyone to listen, no matter if you're young, old, black, white, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, heck, I even want real estate agents listening to my station. Yes, even Rick and Tracy. You're all welcome. Now, it's back to my Goodwill ambassadors, Brad and John.
Now, according to John would also include Ray Hartman and airline stewardesses, right?
Yeah, well, at a reasonable height and weight. Right?
Oh, my God. Here we go again. Okay, couple things. First off, I'm going to ask you notes that from the last break, which we went long, and I didn't want to extend it even further. Okay, does Andrew Bailey ever do any work, or is he just on radio and TV all the time?
Well, hey, in a tough Republican primary year, at least one guy, Will Scharf, would say he's not doing enough work because he would say that the AG's office has dropped the ball on lawsuits like Planned Parenthood, Springfield Public Schools lawsuit about DEI. So it depends on who you ask.
Well,
now the AG does have clearly a team of attorneys working for him. But your point is taken, Brad.
He's all over the radio and TV. He's always on 97.1. I think they should just give him a shift to 97.1. You know, and you know what? Once again, when he's on the air, he's good. He's an excellent speaker.
For sure. And hey, to be fair, though, too, 97.1 does a good job having Will Scharf on. Will's on the Annie Fry show quite a bit. So.
But the guy who, and you know what? I'm going to say this, and you're not going to like it because of the fact that he's your dude, but Jay Ashcroft is just like does nothing for me. I mean, he's just like, yeah, well, thanks, Dana. I'm so glad you have me on the air here. You get Bill Eigel on there, man. You know Bill Eigel's,
Bill's gonna light a fire. Now we should mention. I don't know if you saw this yesterday. Jay Ashcroft rolled out a plan called the Red Print. You know, Jay's an engineer. That's
right.
Part of his shtick is that he's an engineer. And it takes an engineer to solve Missouri problems. Politicians create problems, Brad, but engineers go in and fix them. So he rolled out what's called his Red Print. And the first one was a video yesterday where he made some general promises about how he's not going to increase revenue. He made your point, Brad, about how politicians in Jeff City have doubled the state government in a period of however many years.
Like 7 years.
So he put that out on his social media. It's a little thin on details right now. And Jay pushed back on someone on social media and was essentially like, look, we're coming out with more details on more policies later. Everybody chill out. But, it was a sign of life. You know how, like, Brad, you've watched the Red Cross videos where, like, you're doing you got Resuscita Annie down on the ground. This is a family show, so we'll be careful. But you got Resuscita Annie down, and you do a couple pumps, and you say, Annie, are you okay? Okay, Annie, and then you keep going. Signs of life from the Jay Ashcroft campaign.
Well, so according to the poll he came out with a couple weeks ago, he was like beating both Eigel and Kehoe by quite a bit. But you're the guy with your ear to the ground. Where's he at right now? Do you know?
Well, so St. Louis University partners with a bunch of limeys called YouGov, and they do a poll, and it's promoted widely, and SLU does a good job of promoting it, and they talk about they poll issues like abortion, taxes, whatever. And Jay still has a significant lead over Mike Kehoe and over Bill Eigel. Now, what even the Ashcroft people will tell you is that that's based on name identification. Folks still know the name. There's still a lot of people who know the name Ashcroft. And a Kehoe and an Eigel would tell you, instead, you should look at the undecideds. And when Kehoe and Eigel start spending more money, their name ID will increase. And by that rationale, they'll have a better chance in the polls. Yeah. But you're absolutely right, Brad. And the Ashcroft campaign continues to point out the fact that in every poll, there hasn't been a poll, as far as I'm aware of, that shows either Kehoe or Eigel with a lead over Ashcroft.
Well, he's been in the news lately because he's now fighting the Attorney General of the United States with, this story again. Here we go again. You know what I'm talking about?
And who's he? You mean Ashcroft?
No, yeah, Ashcroft is as Secretary of State. He is now fighting the Attorney General of the United States, Mr. Garland, because of the fact that Mr. Garland has come out and said we're going to go after these states who are discriminating people from the ballot. Yeah. And they're essentially saying, once again, the federal government is saying that asking for photo ID is discriminatory. And once again, I will say, try to live a daily life and now not ask someone to show you your ID. Now, the
hospital, you use the hospital example all the time, Brad.
Anywhere you go, you can't fly unless you're an illegal immigrant, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, that's a different story.
But you can't fly, and once again, you and I talked about these auditing videos all the time. The auditing videos are these guys that purposely, guys and gals, but mostly dudes, who purposely do something to maybe make a police officer pull them over or something like that. Or they're
agitators.
They're agitators. And then they go, I'm not showing you my ID. And the cops always go like, if you don't show me your ID, I'm going to throw you in jail. And then sometimes they literally pull them out of the car and stuff like that. But see, the thing for me is, and the thing I always found fascinating is, years ago I heard somebody tell the story that they went to the Department of Justice in D.C., literally went to the DOJ place in D.C. and refused to show their ID because they said it was discriminatory and they were not allowed in. You have to show a photo ID to get into the Department of Justice. Now, think about that for a minute. He's saying, and see, what I don't understand is, I heard somebody, I can't remember what I was listening to. Maybe I was listening to Jamie on the Patriot or something like that. And they were talking about what the Republicans, and I will say this up front. I mean, I'm going through this right now. I have a situation where I was lucky enough, and I will probably never be invited back, but back in September of last year, I was invited by Dave Zucker, who used to be the mayor of Dardenne Prairie and also the head of the St. Charles County Republican Committee. I was invited to present to their candidate day. And essentially, or what they call their candidate school. Essentially, it's mainly, Board of Education, people running for mayor and city aldermen and stuff like that, and a few state reps and things like that. But they're people who have never done this before. They're people who decided they want to, become a whatever it is, a board member of the Board of Education and stuff like that. And it was a day where I think I was there were 6 people on the agenda. I think I was number 6, and each one had their little expertise, and what got me was, and I stood up, and I thought to the point where at one point in time I thought that Dave Zucker was going to, pull the hook, and like in the old days where they had the hook and they pulled you off the stage.
Yeah, the Kane the Stand-Man from the Apollo show. Yeah.
And I even said, Dave, am I about ready to get thrown out? And he says, no, keep going. I essentially said, look, Republicans, don't be a bunch of wimps. Look at the Democrats. They go out, they harvest voting.
Ballot harvest.
Dave Glover used to talk about all the time about how his mom and dad on election day would go to the old folks' home and pick up, because his mom and dad were Democrats. They would pick up old people. They'd go, hey, you registered? We'll take it. And they would talk about how they would do that all day long. They would drive.
It's a well-oiled organization, Brad.
Right. Whereas the Republicans, and the crazy thing was, a couple of these speakers, and I'm not impugning any of theirs, but if you sat through that whole day, except for me, sat through the whole day, and you said, okay, give me the takeaway on how you run for office in St. Charles County, and the takeaway would be, you put up a bunch of yard signs, you knock on doors. Okay, now, once again, 20, 30, 40 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, that's the way to do it. Nowadays, once again, do you think that somebody who's 21, or like now you can vote at 18, like 19 or 20-year-old, do you think they're driving through the neighborhood? Oh, there's a sign for Joe Smith. I'm going to vote for Joe Smith. No, if they see Joe Smith on TikTok, they're going to say, oh, Joe Smith is cool. I'm voting for him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so I agree to the extent that it's never just one thing. Now, most people, I'm not going to come to the door if you knock on my door. So it's 2024. I'm not going to answer my door.
See, now why is that? Why
door knocking can still be effective. I still think that going out and actually knocking on doors is effective on the right size race. But to think that, hey, you're just going to do I had a conversation with somebody within the last month, and he was talking about how their statewide candidate consultants were like, look, you don't need any grassroots stuff. All you need to do are buy digital ads. So this this person and I were having a conversation about how short-sighted it is to think that just Facebook ads will get you elected. It's never just one thing.
But see, that's something, being a guy who sells advertising and marketing for a living with this radio station, I tell clients that all the time. I said
that it's never just one thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
And even to the point where if you've got the budget, like for example, you've got, like here's the crazy thing. If you're a Casey listener, don't think that everybody else listens to Casey. And nothing against Casey.
Yes, exactly.
Casey is a great radio station, but the idea being is just because you listen to Casey, doesn't that mean everybody listens to Casey? You need to, and radio is segmented to the point where if you want to reach women, 25, 54, you're probably going to be on KZK, you're going to be on Y98, you're not going to be on 97.1 or ESPN 101. But the flip side of that is if you want men, that's exactly where you're going to be.
Exactly.
And the same situation is I think we talk about this all the time, that every single day you're exposed to X amount of messages and things like that. I'm a guy that notices stuff. How many times have I mentioned to you on the air, I saw another Mike Kehoe billboard yesterday?
Yeah, all the time.
I've yet to see a Bill Eigel or a Jay Ashcroft billboard. Now, that's not saying that Mike Kehoe is going to win because he's got more billboards, but yet the philosophy, the mindset of a lot of candidates is the more yard signs and the bigger yard signs, not just those 18 by 24s. You need the 48, the 4 by 8s. You need the 4 foot by 8 foot yard signs. And I'm going like, I don't get it.
Well, and it depends on who's pushing the message, because James Carville has written several campaign books, and I think his books are fantastic. And he did a race, I believe he said it was down in Louisiana, and he said that there was a consultant down there that just insisted that everybody had to buy bus benches. And he's like, and the candidate and staff were like, no, we don't need anything but bus benches. And he tried to figure out, he's like, does this guy's brother-in-law own the advertising rights for every bus bench? If you are a campaign consultant and your buddy is the printer and you get 20% of everything you bring into him, you're going to start the conversation with, okay, let's start with yard signs. We mocked up this design. We're going to print 3,000 of them. That's where you start the conversation.
Well, the thing for me, and once again, I've got a horse or dog in this race with the idea that I have these radio stations, okay? But once again, what's crazy for me is when I made my presentation to these candidates, I go, here's the amazing thing, that if you call these radio stations, chances are they're going to put you on the air. Yeah. And it was like, what? You mean I can just call them? Matter of fact, Monday night, what Monday night is? 97.1 has a Board of Education night at the Soda Museum. You know what the Soda Museum is? In downtown St. Charles. They have a board.
That's Tom Smith. You know why they have it there?
Why is that?
Well, Tom Smith owns the Soda Museum.
Right.
So, I mean, he's been a Republican campaign activist since 1993.
No, I get it. I get what you're saying there. But the point being, at least 97.1 is pointing out the fact that, hey, look, you want to change the school board? You want to get the NEA people off the school board?
Come to the forum. Yep.
Right. Just essentially run for the school board. And now the crazy thing about that is the pendulum swings both ways. Now you've got some of the problems. You know this from your situation with Francis Howell. Francis Howell has what I say are some bomb throwers on the other side now. You know what I mean? Some Republican, and I'm calling one of them, who I will not name, who I think is a wacko. I mean, and once again, why can't we get some down the middle people? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that's probably the Howell thing is probably a different situation, and Lord knows what's going to happen there. I mean, you and I are aligned on who should win this election, I think, but yeah. So to go back to your original point, Brad, how did we get on the topic of radio?
I have no idea.
Of yard signs? Oh, we were talking about yard signs, and we were talking about did this start with Jay Ashcroft?
But see, here's the other thing that bothers me about, and I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if the guy still works for St. Peter's, but he used to be called the sign Nazi. I don't know if you ever heard this story or not.
No.
And,
did he want to remove it from public rights of way?
oh my God, this guy. Matter of fact, I took a picture of it years ago. There was at the St. Peter's City Hall there, right there on Mexico Road. There was like an area behind, sort of on the side of the building where they had like some of their trash dumpsters and stuff like that. This guy would throw all the signs. He'd just drive around the neighborhood. I don't know what he did. He was a building inspector or something like that. And he'd just yank all the signs, except for the politicians. When the politicians were running for office, oh, that's okay. You can put your sign anywhere.
Yeah,
But if you put a sign like open house, or if you put like hey, we need concealed carry, or Jim's 26 today, or stuff like that, he'd grab the sign because
he really showed them. You know what? I bet he was at least had some sort of role in his homeowners association. He seems like an HOA guy.
There's two groups of videos. Once again, I'm a guy that does a lot of YouTube. There's two groups of videos that always crack me up. Have you seen any of these HOA doorbell camera videos?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, they are so funny. And they are so over the top. You think they're fake, but they're real. It's the president of the homeowners association who shows up at somebody's door, and it's all on door camera. It's all, ring doorbell video. Like one of them, the guy is complaining. He goes on the guy's front porch and he says, he's talking, and of course the people, sometimes they answer, sometimes they don't. But if they don't answer, he's giving them a blow-by-blow of why they're going to be fined by the HOA. And he's on this guy's front porch, and he says, "You have a 60-watt light bulb in your door, in your porch light. I came by during the day and looked at it, and I saw it says 60 watts. And the homeowners association says you can't have any more than a 40-watt light bulb on your front."
Violation.
Right. And you're going to get a $50 HOA violation fine in the mail. So if you don't change that light bulb, you'll get one every month. I'm going like, oh my God, life.
What I heard? I also heard though from your neighbor, Brad. I know we're up against break, but I heard from your neighbor that you have this unique style of cutting your grass, whereby you let the grass get you don't scalp your grass, and I'm pretty sure your neighbor wants you to scalp your grass, Brad.
Don't get me going on that. Don't get me going.
You're leaving it a little long, Brad. Don't you want the soil to breathe, Brad? You don't want to trap any moisture in there.
Yeah, right. John saying this with tongue firmly implanted in cheek, right? Okay.
Tongue in cheek, tongue in peach.
Okay, next break we'll talk about cold water.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?